26, 2025, Smithfield School Committee meeting to order. Before we begin, if you please stand, so pledge your flag, which is located out there in the center. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, now we're going to wing this one here. Emergency evacuation and health notification. In the event of an emergency, you're going to go out that door and you're going to, I assume, turn left or right and follow your way to exit doorways. Restrooms, where are they here? Do we know? Same way?
Right across the hall.
Okay, there you go. So, good luck finding the restrooms. We're still tour. There's a public comment sign-up sheet notification up here in the front for anybody who wants to talk during the public comment portion of the meeting. And if you do speak at any portion, there's a podium right there, so we capture you by the camera. Very first item is item 4, consent agenda items, which are the approval of the minutes, the open minutes of the June 12, 2025 Smithfield School Committee meeting, the approval and sealing of the executive session minutes of June 5, 2025, approval of bills. Regular bills totaling $225,885.47. B, direct checks from June 9, 2025 to June 24, 2025, totaling $37,861.65, and lunch bills totaling $671, and a request for approval to pay invoices through July 24, 2025. This will require a motion.
Motion to approve consent agenda items.
And a second. Motion made and seconded. Any questions, comments? If not, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Against, nay. The ayes have it. Item 5, superintendent's report. And I'll just make one comment. I'm going to be going over some of the adjustments that we may have to make. You'll notice we're not actually voting on it, but this is to show you where it is. Okay? And this is where you can make any comments as to whatever you feel like going forward here. What has passed or where we're headed, all right? Thank you.
Right. Thank you, Richard. So I want to give just the committee a little bit of an update. As you know, even though the budget vote for the town appropriations was last week, it's still through a document, so we really don't have final figures until the July 24th meeting, so things are shifting. So I'll explain that along the way. But I wanted to at least keep you updated on what my thoughts were in terms of potentials for cuts so that we can meet the new budget figures. So again, this is updated since last Tuesday's town council vote on the budget. My priorities are to make sure that we have appropriate staffing in each of the schools and at our district office, to ensure we have curriculum and supplies for each classroom are ready for the first day of school on August 26th. To make sure that we keep advancing in terms of technology so that students have their one-to-one devices and we have appropriate technology to meet our operational needs. Continue in the same vein that we've been working in, expanding our college and career readiness, K-12, and ensuring that we have appropriate supplemental curriculum programs and specialists so that we can continue to push student achievement forward. Back in February, the school committee voted to approve a 3.24 increase to our recommended budget that was sent over to the town. Melissa and I had many meetings with the town manager and with the town finance director to go through our budget, certainly line by line, explain the increase that we were looking for and what it would be going towards, which was in many ways keeping up with the mandated expenses that do arise each year. So this next slide, there is a bit of an adjustment because some of the numbers are still fluctuating. But again, approved state aid, we did get additional state aid, which totals an increase of a little bit over $800,566 over last year. This came from an increase of state aid of $181,674. So this was from categoricals that were changing between January and this month. So as to date, the bulk bulk of that was because of the change in our enrollment. Our enrollment has increased between October and March, and that $142,830 is to meet that increased attendance. In addition, we did get a little over $29,000 for additional group home aid, and again, can only be budgeted in that category, and an additional $9,103 in high-cost special education. So that led us to the increase in the total budget. I do want to point out that the high-cost special education increase is a decrease from last year. So again, during this January through June period, there was a recalculation throughout the state in this category. So we're actually receiving less money budgeted in that area, which may have an impact on meeting certainly needs within the special education program.
Can I just ask you something, make sure my brain has it here, okay, so we got an increase off of the original proposal from the governor, but even with that increase, it is less than what we ended up with last year.
In that category.
In that category, that's all.
In the special ed, we
Right,
had
okay.
130,000 last year in high-cost special ed.
Okay, I just wanted to, just make sure.
Happened.
Sometimes people ask me these questions, I want to explain them properly. Now I know, thank you.
So the town appropriations recommendation, while we requested 3.24 and certainly put forth information to the town officials as well as several meetings with the Finance Review Committee that were, I thought, very productive. The recommendation was for a 2% increase over FY25. That came from both the town manager and the Finance Review Board going into last Tuesday's town council meeting. To reduce our budget from 3.24 to 2% was a reduction of $550,000. So we were certainly working towards those cuts already. No people were impacted certainly, but looking at different costs where we can reduce, not ordering as many materials, looking at positions. At the meeting, as you know, there was a further cut to the town appropriations. So the amount received is $275,000 over last year's budget, which is less than a 1% increase. It's exactly a 0.8% increase over the town appropriations. So that is a much more significant cut. So just adding what the initial cut was to make 2% and then another as we're trying to, again, it's fluid, but as we're trying to meet this 0.8%, is an $825,000 cut, which it's very hard at that point and in our budget not to impact positions. But I'm going to show you again, there's still adjustments happening, but this is a really significant cut in my opinion. I just want to give some context. I went back, I thought it was important to go back pre-pandemic through to this most recent vote so that you could see the increases or lack of increases from the town. So pre and post-pandemic, average out over 8 years, it's slightly over a 1% increase on an annual basis, whereas the cost drivers are bringing us above that amount. So they don't meet the growth in the district. It has required significant supplementation by grant funding, as you know, in instructional programs. We're still waiting for some grant funding, so that is much slower this year. I do expect that there will be a reduction in our categorical support grants. And the grants that are available that we might have received before are going to become much more competitive. What has helped bridge the gap is that increase in state aid. Because without that, I think we would have really been in a much more serious situation, more dire. So here's what my thoughts are in terms of direct impact of reductions, and I do want to let the committee know. In terms of staffing for next year, we have filled all teaching and staff positions unless something changes. But we continued to hire. We've had certainly, for teachers, we've had anywhere from 50 to 90 applications. And we are almost fully staffed. I expect by tomorrow we will officially be fully staffed for our administrative team as well. Keeping in mind that this is still a significant area that we need to cut, we're looking at reducing the high school administration by one administrator. I put in there as a placeholder the Dean of Students position / CTE. Certainly right now, as of today, the assistant principal position is the one that's open, so it could be that one, but I think it would be the dean if we cannot. Again, that would be a good news scenario. Our district electrician, we're not filling, so that's one fewer person in maintenance. Again, this is a vacant position right now. We're just going to decide not to fill it for at least a year. I had recommended, again, in consultation with Eileen, additional paraprofessionals outside of IEPs in some of our schools where the extra support was helpful. Again, those are off the table just for IEPs. We are looking at a program of adding another special education teacher at Smithfield High School. And I'll talk a little bit more about that later, but basically to have a home base for students at the high school. And this is something that I think over the past few years, if not longer, we have needed. And Eileen, correct me if I'm wrong, I think at one time this position did exist.
So we do have an alternative learning program at the high school that was once staffed with 2 teachers, and with the increasing caseloads, one teacher has had to, support students in gen ed. So that program is down to 1 teacher. If we could add another teacher, it would actually serve as a home base for kids who are returning from school from a prolonged absence, such as hospitalization, and provide that, one consistent special educator, where sometimes we have to divide services among several special educators. Some students really do benefit from having that one consistent person, and so this would be an additional teacher to do that.
And again, another program, this is a major supplemental is, again, it's not a mandated program, it's not a curriculum program, but it is an intervention program, Lexia, for all elementary students. And again, I'm not saying these are definite cuts, but I have to show you where I'm looking that will have the least impact on current personnel and on classrooms, but there is a definite impact on classrooms of these deeper cuts. The CT program, there.
Sorry. Do we have any data before using Lexia to now to see growth rates on how it's helping students or not helping, just to see if that's significant to that program?
That's a great question. So certainly we can get you the data on that. I know that throughout the year, our schools, particularly elementary schools, do have the Lexia achievement boards, so they do keep that. The teachers use that data as well, so that would not be hard for me to get you that. I do believe it is a worthwhile program. CT program growth and potential. As you know, this is an area of real growth for us. It's very dynamic. We certainly want to keep our Smithfield students coming from the middle school into the high school. We're also attracting students from other districts because our programs are growing and they are strong. Certainly not being able to order some of the equipment, or potentially not being able to go forward on professional development for the teachers of CTE so that they meet the requirements, or potentially losing another position, for instance, a new science teacher that would free up other more experienced teachers to teach in the biomedical or the engineering program would have a direct impact on the growth of the program and on students. Equipment and materials for science courses, we've done, those of us at the table have done some grant writing. We were looking to be able to update through grant funding some of the equipment for the science classes as well, particularly because the science classes were done 20 years ago, so they're relatively new in comparison to the building, but they do need an upgrade. This would also reduce library books and materials at all 5 of the schools, keeping in place research and other types of materials that were needed for graduation, for specialized program, keeping the book requests in place for our Title I school as well. And again, none of these are great cuts. Looking at our transportation budget, can we trim as well in field trips and in the athletic program? Not sure quite what that's going to look like, but looking at reductions in a couple of different areas to come up with with what was needed. And then maintenance. We, over the past year or so, we've been able to have a replacement cycle of painting, ceiling tiles, fixing what needs to occur, the renovations that are happening. This is an area that we would, again, go back to the, I'm going to call it a failed model of deferred maintenance. So these additions to outside areas added extra stress to our maintenance staff. We're already eliminating one position, we're not adding another. As you may recall, back in January, had recommended an additional maintenance person to work on a swing shift, and that would also take care of the addition of the outside grounds, the Boyle Field complex, so this would reduce that. In terms of potential opportunities cost by this budget, I want to just talk a little bit about what that might mean.
Can I just ask one question now? Now,
course.
these are potential cuts at this point that you're looking at, right? To give us an idea of where things will come when all the numbers are fine, right?
That's
None of
correct.
these have not, but I mean, for instance, on the CTE, I noticed you put growth potential, loss of enrollment, et cetera. You didn't specifically mention, I know we want to have 3 programs coming online this year. You didn't mention if one would not come online at this point, right?
Well, in terms of the equipment, so the biomedical is a potential, so that is ready to come online. That is one program that we lose the most students to other districts to be able to. So if we, for instance, could not order the materials and the equipment that we needed for that program, or the grant funding was less than what was required, that could be, certainly could be impacted. I expect that our culinary program is going to come on. It may slow down the pre-engineering program, which would also run out of the science department.
Okay, thank you. It's not, final determinations aren't there, but you're just giving us an idea so that we don't all collapse later on.
So it won't be a surprise. Melissa and I are working on various scenarios where we are dropping these areas to see how close we can get. So again, that's kind of our sandbox that we're in, that these cuts are coming into a projected budget, because we do have to still continue to make these cuts, but I want to give you at least an update on where I'm thinking and how we're working at the district office. Again, one of the areas I think of opportunity, we know that our families, our teachers have told me, our principal, they really want the math interventionist back, they want that position back, I want that position back. We had to trim that when we lost the grant funding. We got the reduction from the state 2 years ago with the possibility that grant funding would come back. As of right now, it's not. It is not coming back, so that would be an opportunity for us to again target math instruction of our elementaries. We all know math instruction builds upon each year, each different type of course. So this would be certainly a great benefit for our students and for our teachers. It also would lower potentially out-of-district tuition costs with having the programs like a really robust CTE, whereas biomedical is one of the ones that I mentioned. That's certainly an area in engineering, potentially construction. These are areas that we're losing a lot of students to other programs. So I showed you at the last meeting our growth in CTE. We're still growing. I've got a slide in here which shows us actually looks like we're actually at the break-even point. We have the same number of kids coming in that we have going out, which is a tremendous increase over just a few years. So again, I want to keep that momentum going. Keeping this differentiated instruction for high school students, for instance, the program, the alternative education program at the high school. The more we can personalize instruction, the more we build that sense of belonging, but as importantly, help students to achieve. Student progress monitoring, discipline, and supervision will be a direct hit by not having that administrative position. And then just keeping up with the technology, and we're not talking anything crazy, but just being able to give students new devices. For the district plan has been since the pandemic to give it at three different intervals: kindergarten, 5th grade, and then 9th grade. So even with those intervals, students are keeping those devices probably longer than recommended. They're relatively inexpensive at the lower grades. Chromebooks, they have a higher power for the upper levels as well. We've had a trim in those areas the 3 years that I've been here because, again, the technology staff is great in terms of doing the repairs, the replacements, but at each grade level, the cost is about $92,000 per grade level. So it's a high cost, and I'm not saying it's not worthwhile, but it has been an area that's been trimmed over the years. Similarly, administrative devices, we have kicked those down the road a long time. There is a change in operating systems to Windows 11 that has definitely had an impact on many of our devices that are just key to running the district, also for running programs. So we did make the purchase for the middle school computer science classes because those computers were over 10 years old and would not be able to take Windows 11, and that is a graduation requirement, of course. And then just addressing our long-term maintenance needs. Certainly we're working on renovation, and $400,000 or $500,000, as you know, does not go very far. So at this pace, or to be able to having to cut down on our daily maintenance, it certainly will impact the replacement cycles that we really hit pretty strong over the past year. And again, an impact on preventative maintenance, which we want to keep going, and then our newly renovated areas, both the inside and outside of our physical buildings. This just goes a little bit more into detail on the value of math interventionists, which I know this committee agrees with, and certainly having that loss for 2 years for targeted intervention, small group instruction, having an additional special education teacher. We can use many more, but certainly having that home base. And again, looking at a postponement, possibly, of our new CT and our STEM pathways that we started to build K through 12. So 2 years ago, we did implement STEM classes for K through 5. It does have some equipment, but being able to, our goal was to be able to add to that equipment each year. So right now, we are paused on those areas. Technology, in addition to the hardware, having Wi-Fi access points expanded at GMS and SHS so that there aren't any dark spots where there's just no, or it's varied reception for devices and for teachers teaching. Growing our STEM labs at the elementary and middle school, as these will become feeders for our high school programs if students desire. And again, that replacement in the library I've already spoken about. Just wanted to just show you again where the growth is with the CTE pathways. The current 5, the plan is to have 3 up and running for next year. Culinary is a definite. We're hopeful that biomedical will go forward. Pre-engineering may pause for 1 year. That would make the most sense. And then looking at 3 other potential areas. These areas also become possible tracks for pre-CTE at the middle school level. So this is updated. And again, these numbers change almost daily, particularly in terms of the revenue and the expenses, because we're still enrolling students for our CTE programs, and we're also getting information about students who are enrolling anywhere else. But if you can see students leaving the district, 22-23 school year, under expenses for tuition, it's over $656,000. That has reduced slightly, the breakage between students coming in and students leaving has reduced significantly. So this past year, $662,000 went out to student tuitions, whereas we were bringing in 610. This is only the CTE programs. Our projection is $650,000 based on what we know today. We know that the expenses are going to be reduced. So again, at the bottom chart, as of today, we have 46 students enrolled from other districts coming into our programs. We have 46 that are going to other programs. This data you've seen, I just again want to remind anyone in the audience, salary and benefits are always in a school district the highest percentage. We're at 78%. It is not the highest of school districts. I've certainly seen them as high as 82% of the district budget. Materials, what that includes are equipment, so projectors are going to be one of the areas that we are going to cut. 17 projectors, interactive for the classroom. These are materials. They need to be replaced. Same thing with furniture and some teacher devices. In terms of transportation, we have our in-house DATCO with our routes. We know what the contract is. It changes, as Melissa explained the other night, depending on if a new route is added. So again, DATCO is looking at routes for next year based on our enrollment. We'll have that in by August. But we also have statewide transportation where there is no negotiating. Those are set fees that districts have to pay. So whereas we have some discussion when we come to our contracts with DATCO or any other vendor, statewide is assigned by the state, and that is students that may be going to an out-of-district special ed program, another non-public school, career tech ed programs to others. So again, it's a higher cost typically. And then special education. It's often an unknown what the out-of-cost district tuitions would be for education and residential placements. Just for CTE programs, we know that tuitions range from $5,000 to about $19,000, but the new rates have just come in. So I can give you a specific, these tuition rates do not include special education. And facilities, our repairs, our purchase services, which includes insurance, plowing, environmental testing. Those are regular, although varied at times, services that we have. And again, I've outlined technology, hardware, or cybersecurity, purchase services for pupil use and student support, as well as what's needed for operations of the district. The school committee, unless there's any questions, I just want to talk about capital. The school committee had requested $400,000 in capital this year, which would have matched the $400,000 by the town last year. This would keep a cycle allowing us to keep renovating on the capital plan that we've developed, and that is at the town, the areas that the school committee has outlined as priority are certainly renovations of our existing bathrooms and locker rooms at both the middle and the high school. Our intensive special education room at Gallagher Middle School. Currently, as you know, we are working on the intensive special education room at the high school. Partial roof replacement, we're out of warranty at Smithfield High School. Flooring replacement at both of these schools. Wireless access again at both of these schools. Looking at the elevator renovation, replacement, or a different device. Those are pre-ADA, they were installed. Angelo did meet with a contractor just to see if these could even be renovated or if a different type of a lift provided to occur. Additional security cameras at all schools and improvements to the Smithfield High School generator. In our budget allocation, In addition, the town council voted to approve a recommendation for $500,000 in the capital fund for FY '26.
So,
That is all the new
any
news.
members, questions, comments, venting, whatever. No venting, just a quick question.
Did the insurance numbers finally come in? I know that it was all the projections, because it's around this time of year that we get final numbers.
You talking about the medical insurance? Yeah, so the increase for the medical insurance was originally 9.7%. And it was 5% for dental. However, that was really steep, and we had some dividend credits at the trust, and so we opted to take some of those credits, $60,000, and apply it to the rate, which brings the rate in the budget down to 8.5%. So it is reducing some of the expense, also giving some of that share to the employees whose core share on the plan for their deductions and their paychecks is reduced somewhat a little bit. However, keeping that in mind, and next year when the budget gets built, that 1.2% or whatever the difference is there, that 1.2% will need to be added back as the base, and then whatever next year's increase is. Now last year, the year we're in now, 25, the increase was much lower. It was somewhere around 5.9. So the 9.7 is pretty steep, and I just, that was an opportunity to take that 60,000. I believe the town did the same, so that's where we are with those.
Gotcha, thank you. What about the property casualty?
So that, the property insurance, well, the workers' comp insurance came in at, about $10,000 less. It was a little more than that, but I left, a few thousand in for deductibles and things like that. And the property, I did not look at it, just came in. Last week I gotta read all the pages, so I printed it out. I haven't read it yet because I've been trying to figure out where we've been. I was, with Sarah's last days, meeting with Lisa, Eileen, and Dawn, trying to capture everything that we could to put this together.
Questions, any other questions, comments?
I forgot one.
Yes.
When is the enrollment for the CTE programs, and they're not a district, when is that deadline?
Each district sets its own deadline, so some of the districts have. We have continued a rolling deadline, so we are allowing it through the summer up through, I believe, the start of classes. So just one more thing about the CTE, and it'll come up a little bit, not too long after we go to the next agenda item. If we do reduce the dean CTE position, so that dean position is partially funded by 15% of CTE funds. So when we lose that funding, I would apply that to a stipend for an advisor position. It cannot be applied to an existing position, for instance, a principal or an assistant principal.
Other questions? Okay, I have a few questions and comments. The other, first of all, I do want to say that I've received a number of people in town who have, got to today, who, like to congratulate the superintendent and the director of finances on your presentations the other night. They said you did a very good job, even though it was not something that ended our way. I've gone through quite a few of these, and typically I'm, we'll say, upset the first night, and then things set in, and I take what I can as a gain, and I realize. This time was just the reverse. I was very frustrated the night of the after that. I woke up mad, because the realization came to me that we were the only part of town government, the only department of town government that was cut. The only one. And we were told that any of this craziness over a loan or not was not affecting decisions, yet we were the only one that was cut. There was a single other department that was cut. In fact, 2 departments had extra money in it. I looked at that, and I don't like being misled like that. I feel it was disingenuous by the council. Not only did they make this motion, but they made a motion without a single explanation as to what went into that motion. Why were they doing what they were doing? And that bothers me, to be honest with you. So, having said that, one of the things, and it's not on tonight's agenda, but one of the things I will bring up at our next meeting, which is not until later in July, is for us to look at, as the superintendent pointed out, we asked for $400,000 in capital, we got $500,000, so they gave us an extra $100,000. And we should at least talk about whether or not we want to present to the council and ask them to move $100,000 from capital into our operating budget. From their standpoint, it's totally revenue, doesn't change it. And I think we can bring it up, we can talk about it at our next meeting. They don't meet again till late July either. But, and I will have a chance to maybe talk to a council person or two, just to say, hey, this is an idea we have, see if we get any support being brought up there. But, I mean, we know we could use $5 million in capital, the needs of such. But, particularly since our request was for 400, and they basically devastated us on the other end. I think we should, this is my thought right now, so we'll talk about it at a future meeting, and I just wanted to let everything know. Also, later on, as the superintendent pointed out, there are a couple of things here that will come up that may be areas to help us in terms of how we proceed as we go forward. So, okay, if there's nothing else on that, is that for later on, or is that for right now?
It's actually for this.
Oh, then, you don't even have to bother signing, you can
Alright.
go right up and have your say.
Alright. Thank you, Ian McLean, 22 Highview Drive.
Very good.
So I have a few questions, Dawn, related to the potential cuts that you were talking toward. And it's more so understanding the impacts of them and how it's going to impact the children. So one of the first you mentioned was the open position for a district electrician. So from a financial standpoint, I would be curious, the budget that headcount carries with it versus how much you then have to spend to third-party contractors and what the delta might be there. Is this gonna actually cost us more money by having to hire out third-party companies for the work that person would be doing otherwise?
So, in my 2-year tenure here, that position has not been filled. And, we have been very lucky that, I think we spoke about this a few meetings back, you were not present at, but, we did a calculation and have been lucky that our electrical, third party has not been significant. Some of the work that we are doing, that we hire a third party for, has been grant funded, such as the improvements that are going on at the high school or middle school. So some of that electrical work was funded with a grant, but as far as the standard repairs and things like that, we have been fortunate here. I believe, and please don't quote me as a definite, but I believe when we were speaking about it last time, we said that this year, FY25, a few months ago, we were at about 14,000, which was much less. Jeff, I think you had asked,
That sounds about right.
Was
I
that-
remember being
yeah,
less than 20,000.
yeah, okay. So anyway, so we've been fortunate, but having the electrician, we could have used an electrician to do some of the work that the third party did in the grant, and then have the grant funds available for maybe additional equipment. So that was the only thing, but we were fortunate to have some grant fundings, so that was the only thing, yeah, that's all I can say. We don't know if all the lights go out tomorrow,
Right.
you know, so we don't really know from year to year. There hasn't been a huge history of electrical work that has to be done.
Yeah, one of the things in typical, for instance, all of our elementary schools have had a pretty much thorough revamping of the electric. However, just a general principle, it's a big job, we're probably going out to a contractor anyhow. It's the little jobs, because every time you go to a third-party contractor, you know, they rightly put on their overhead and their profit. And you add up a bunch of little jobs, it adds up to a lot of money. So luckily, we have not had a bunch of little jobs, but that's where the cost differential generally is, something like that.
And if I could just add to that, we have an electrician and a plumber. So they also do other jobs, so the impact is that we're still down one person, so we have been down that one person in the maintenance department for 2 years.
Okay, thank you. Next question I had, one of the points was the potential reduction for 5th grade STEM or elementary STEM. What is the projected or likely impact on RICAS scores for the district by having a reduction in the growth or engagement of that STEM program, knowing that 5th grade RICAS starts touching more on science topics?
Good question. So hopefully it will not have an impact on that at all, because that will not be resulting in elimination of those positions. So we do have in our budget still our library media specialists who are also STEM integrations. Those will continue. Those are not on the chopping block. We also have the STEM coordinator who works with both math and science in our buildings. That is not on the chopping block as well. Where I think we miss the opportunity is being able to, maybe as the kids increase their proficiency, to be able to have more sophisticated equipment for them to be able to use, to teach them to be able to, ideally, for instance, they start coding in the elementary schools, they go to a more advanced in the middle school. Because of this, we're starting to look at even more advanced levels, for instance, proficiency and certification in Python and Java by the time they graduate 8th grade, which will also boost where they are when they get to high school. So these are the opportunity costs that I envision. In terms of the testing, they'll still have certainly the devices. We make sure the devices are ready for the RICAS testing. My concern is we need to keep updating these one-to-one devices, because we can't keep as long of a cycle as where we have in some of our grade levels.
And it sounds like you're potentially not expanding STEM education earlier, which would then provide gains as they move up in their grade levels.
I agree with you. So everything is certainly on the table, including the STEM at elementary.
And then related to the CTE programs, I loved the slide. It was really helpful seeing the number of students coming in and leaving. I did a little math on all of that. But if we did have to cut or delay the biomed program, how many students were we projecting to be enrolled in that program coming in from other districts, and how many biomed students are we leaving going out to other districts currently? And what's that delta look like?
Again, it may not be exact. Right now, I don't have the full figures for biomedical because it's coming online this school year. So we're mostly going to be capturing our own students that are going to be going in there, which is of import. Biomedical is, I want to say 26 students. Last year went out of district for this particular program to a specific program at another school.
Out of the roughly
46.
40, so 26 out of that 46 left.
Correct. For biomedical.
At an average cost, we pay out roughly $14,000, if we take the rough numbers for the exports, about $14,000 per student that are leaving to go to that. So
that would be us. So it would be higher because the school, I'm not the finance director, obviously, so she'll jump in. It's closer to a little over $18,000 per student for that.
And I'm only saying it because that's an astronomical number and a huge impact to the district's budgets. So I'm saying it just for public awareness more than anything, as I was running the numbers.
Absolutely. So again, the district that students are going to for that particular program or ancillary, like those of pre-engineering, that is the bulk of our students going out, and it's at a very high tuition rate. Of interest, because we are changing things, I believe, from that district where we had never had a student coming the other way, we do have an enrolled student coming from that school. So we are trying to change that trend. But you're right, the opportunity exists right now. We have the staffing in place. We have the professional development we're able to do during this year that was paid for through a grant. We do have to buy some equipment. Some may be grant funded. Again, we're waiting on grants to come through, but our teaching staff would be ready to start this program now.
I mean, just some math, that's about $400,000, just with broad numbers, broad estimates, that we'll be spending towards other districts to educate our students elsewhere versus educating internally.
Correct, but if I just wanna mention one, even if we have the biomedical here, not all of them would return because they're mid in
They're
their
already in it.
program, right? And then even if we had a flood in, we'd have to look at space and teachers and having, the appropriate staff to teach it. So, yes, totally a valid point about those numbers, but that would be the savings in the future as we grow the program. You can see over the past 2 years or so, or 3 years since Dawn's been here, what the changes on the scale, right? You saw the revenue coming in was a lot lower, so it's grown significantly. And so as we continue to add all the different pathways, I think we'll see more growth because Smithfield's programs will be newer.
Right. No, it makes a lot of sense to me. Thank you so much for the clarifications and the answers.
Can I ask one question about that? So we said 26 students are leaving for biomedical to another district. This is one of the districts that we don't get a discount on tuition, correct? And the other part of that is, so say we have biomedical, this is in, 2 years, a student doesn't necessarily have to stay in Smithfield because they can argue that their facilities are better.
That's a great point, and certainly that is hard for us to compete with. Brand new high schools, brand new facilities are very attractive during the showcases. What we have is we have great staff, we have great programs. This is a great district, but it is hard to compare shiny and new.
Right, exactly. So when we're looking at getting heat for not adding CTE programs, and getting money geared towards CTE programs, we also need money for our facilities in order to have that shiny new, so we still get kids, otherwise they can still go to a district that is more shiny new, even though we have the best state here.
And, a year ago, I looked at our test scores compared to a bunch of other districts locally here where we were losing. And in virtually every category, and this includes some charter schools, virtually every category, our math and English test scores were better. But kids going in on a tour aren't saying, wow, look at that, they got good math scores here. They're saying, that's shiny and new. But it was amazing. I mean, there were a few that were with us on certain things, but I don't think anybody beat us on both, So, and we were above many of them. So, that's a hard sell, but we keep doing it. Obviously, the trend is heading in the right direction, so we have to keep it up. Bringing up of that program did remind me of one thing I didn't put in my comments, and that is, if we run into a problem in getting equipment for the biomed, we really should look at our fund balance. Typically, fund balance shouldn't be spent on things that are recurring expenses, but something like equipment. Last year, we could take money out of fund balance for certain things we needed to spend on, would be something to help the program get off the ground. So I don't want that to be the reason. Not that you shouldn't look for grants, not that, but that should be something that we should be able to fill that gap with. Okay, any further questions on any of this? If not, we're gonna move on to item 6. Discuss, review, and approve formation of district committees. And I think the superintendent had a review.
I wanted just to explain, I've done this in other districts, just in terms of having study committees. So, for instance, what I would recommend is having a policy committee, and again, would be administrators, teachers, potentially for some of these even students, and then at least a liaison to the school committee where we can actually take each of the policies, because there's a number that need to be revamped. I think it would, and to be able to study it, review them, make some changes, and then report to the school committee so that you're getting actual work that's being done instead of having to discuss it right on the spot and having those reports in advance. So in terms of, for instance, dress code policy, I know that we've talked about, and we'll be addressing that this summer, but that might have been an example of policy. Because right now, we're sending those out to the administrators at the schools to take a look at, to give feedback. But if we had a standing policy committee, that can start going through all of them and start doing the work, and it could change in terms of composition. This would, I think, help the school committee provide additional work, research, and then drafts to review and comment on.
Question. And this is separate from committees that are used for hiring, the hiring process, what they say. That's set out in the hiring policy. So if there aren't any further questions.
I guess one question.
Yes.
What would the committee consist of? Who would the stakeholders be?
Certainly, I'm open to suggestions on it. Just in the past, I've had, for instance, principal or principals on those, teachers on that, a district administrator, as well as school committee members on there. So typically, depending on the interest, 1 or 2 school committee members to be on there.
I would just stress the importance of throwing the same offer out to residents in town. Parents want to get involved as well.
Actually, that's a great idea, and certainly when we do, for instance, strategic planning, having community members on board, so I think it's an excellent suggestion.
Further questions, this will require a motion.
Motion to approve new district committee?
And a second.
Second.
Specify which is policy.
Policy district.
Motion to approve new district policy committee?
There you go.
Second.
All right. Now they all know we're doing. Any further questions, comments? Not all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Against nay, the ayes have it. On to item 7.
This is,
Discuss, review, and approve template for CT advisors stipend.
so again, this is a template for you to review and hopefully to approve in case we do have to cut the dean, director of CTE position from the budget. There's a lot of work that happens behind the scenes. Lisa knows, as do I, in terms of making sure that the grants come in, so there's a whole reporting aspect to the state so that it's monitored how we spend money, where we spend money, which parts of it can be for personnel, which parts are for equipment, which parts are for professional development. So in place of that, certainly having I see this as a teacher position that people would apply for at the high school, that would be an extra duty, and again, I put in a dollar amount. Again, this would be a new position, so it would qualify for grant funding through the CTE program, much as the dean position qualified this year.
Questions? Go ahead.
Who would appoint this position? Would it be SHS administration or superintendent?
It would be, ultimately, I do all of the appointments, so in terms of how we do these stipended positions currently, Lisa sends out the posting to everybody. They respond back if they're of interest. The principal would do the interviews and would do the recommendation to me.
I have one question under other duties, next to the last bullet, it says provide central office and SHS. Are we missing, okay, what they're providing, central office and SHS?
Perhaps in terms of other materials as needed to make sure that the grant continues. So this is really someone who is very good with data, is good with reporting, can help organize the assessments that are connected to the final year of each CTE programs.
So they're providing
Data.
data for.
With data and information to central office, I'll update that. Thank you.
Okay, as noted, this will require a motion.
Motion to approve the CT advisor stipend pending the cut of the CT position at the high school?
Yeah, well, actually, this will go in place whether it's cut or not that way in the future. So it doesn't actually have to be tied to it, you know what I mean? I mean, if the
But we would
position-
approve this position with the other position, because I wouldn't want both.
No, this is only the template right now, so we couldn't actually, I mean, as I
Oh,
look
the
at it,
template, just the
Yeah.
template. Okay, all right, so motion to approve the template for the CT advisor stipend.
And a second? Motion made, second. Further questions? If not, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Against, nay. The ayes have it. 8, discuss, review, and approve the template for Facility 12 guidance and coordinators.
I was wondering if we could pull this item,
That is
for
all.
later.
Yeah, very fast. Item 9, discuss, review, and approve template for part-time human resources and facilities management and fundraising profession.
Okay, so this certainly has a lot to this position. I'm sure you remember when I had put before you a proposed position for the facilities management within the district, and we really didn't have much interest in that. Certainly looking at some areas of need, the onboarding, offboarding processes are onerous. A lot of it is certainly covered by multiple people in central office, ensuring that we have someone who is trained in that position, as well as tying that to the needs of the district for facilities. We have a brand new digital program which will make, renting different spaces inside and outside of the school much easier. We don't have someone, right now it's been an add-on position, we don't have someone that will man that. But that's key because those positions do generate the revenue. So for instance, where there are no custodians on a Sunday, it will generate funding to be able to pay the custodial costs so that for an outside group, the school district is not paying that cost, and to keep track of all events so that there is less of a chance that 2 events might happen simultaneously. In speaking with the chair and looking at our Boyle Field and being able to pull together some revenue that will again go towards the school committee's fund to be able to replace the turf or other equipment. We really need someone that could head up what I'm going to call as a capital campaign to take advantage of our local companies, our local vendors, some of the larger companies, to have consistent advertising, but also the revenue stream on our Boyle Athletic Field and other properties, for instance, perhaps the softball field, baseball field, as well as the basketball court. So this would be a part-time position, no more than 19 hours, so there's no benefits or pension that it would be tied to this, up to $50 an hour. Again, looking at surrounding districts, so I called around to superintendents. Similar position to this does exist in a very like district. So these type of professionals are out there that have the background. So I'm just asking for permission to have this template. I think the other piece that could be filled by this individual, and again, 19 hours is not a lot, but if you spread it through the year, and the weeks may vary, are communication pieces. So having someone that actually has the skill set to work on a district or school website. So it really is a unique position in which we're upgrading our communications, our onboarding and offboarding processes, as well as the rental of facilities, as we're looking at revenue streams that are available to us at the district.
Any questions? One of the pieces on the Boyle project here, that is we do need to get advertising and other things so we can start filling up money for that field, because remember, in about 10 years, 1 year is down now, so 9 years, there will need to be a new cover on that field. It will be warranted. It's supposed to be for 8 years, they managed to get it for 10 years, which is good for them. But it's the type of thing you gotta start now and build it up over time, because I think everybody here knows what it's like to go to town council, to ask them for something, and it's not a guarantee. And we could be sitting here on, year 10, and they say, no, we're not gonna give you the money, or we're gonna give you, pittance or something like that. When we already know we have all these other projects, which are phase 2 is going to be broad light to say, here's what other projects you have here. And so it's important that we have somebody looking at that. And it makes sense that it be the same person that looks the field as well. They kind of fall hand in hand. So, questions? Yes, Mr. Law.
And this would just be a position that would be renewed every year, is that kind of your vision of this?
That's exactly how I see it. It would be an at-will contract that I would envision, and potentially one that may, through the work of getting advertising, might at least be partially funded through the work that's being done.
Because I didn't vote to approve the new position before, because I felt like it was, at the time, putting the cart before the horse in a way. But if, I'm willing to reconsider, particularly if after a year, we can look at, okay, what have they brought in? Are they not only offsetting their costs, but our immediate costs when it comes to field work that we doesn't have to be done in 9 years? Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Any further questions?
I have one question.
Yes.
Is this just approving the template, or is this approving the position?
It would be approving the template so that I could advertise the position.
And how much would we say total is the position? I just have a hard time with us looking at budget cuts and then adding new positions to our budget, essentially, when we are looking at the potential to cut a science teacher. You know, or that potential of, I don't wanna invest in something that we haven't had before, maybe table it for a year, if it means, saving our budget a little bit. Or tabling this until we know financially if we can move that 100,000, or, you know, looking at it now, so that's where
It's a and I am torn that way too, Amanda. The reason I decided to bring this forward is, I do think part of the town council vote was because we are not generating, I just don't have the staffing. Best intentions, I'd love to lead that up, I just can't lead up, this capital campaign in the way that I really need someone to come in and jumpstart it, or strategic planning sessions that happen, just to go in a little different vein, but related in terms of our communications and our publicity for our schools, which also goes into our program. We really need an expert to come in and have a professional look to our district website and our school websites, and to have links, etc. So even if it were on a let's see how it goes basis, I think if we can generate funds that may offset the cost and eventually take over the cost, I would just ask the committee just to consider it, because I think for all of us, this would be on a trial basis. Again, it would be an at-will position that would not be locked into a full year if it wasn't working.
Other questions? If not, this does require a motion.
Motion to approve part-time human resources and facilities management fundraising professional template.
And a second.
Second.
Motion made second. Further questions or comments? If not, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Against nay, the ayes have it. Item number 10, approval of fiscal year 25 budget transfers.
So this evening, we have one budget transfer for your approval. If you notice, it is related to the hardware in the district. We had some leftover hardware that was unspent. Part of the entry is to move between locations, and so you'll see on the screen, you'll see that there's a group of everything that has the number 57309. It's right before the zeros at the right hand side of the long account code. So we were doing that, and then some additional, so $7,000 of this $20,000 is already in hardware. We're just moving it to the correct location of where the negatives are. And then the others is also technology. It was for other tech services that had some unspent funds, and then pupil use internet and some general materials and tech-related supplies to cover for the $20,000 of equipment that we need to purchase.
Requires a motion, since approval.
Motion to approve budget transfers?
And a second.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. And any Any questions? I'm just glad you got the 17 cents in there on that line. All right. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Against, nay. The ayes have it. Item 11, discuss, review, and approve the transfer of $88,575.32 from the Northern Rhode Island Collaborative NRIC Dissolution Disbursement to the School District Capital Fund for Special Education. So, I'll let you explain in terms of what this is. You may or may not, new members probably don't have any clue, but you're gonna find out.
So at one time up through last year, Smithfield and a number of other districts are part of the, what was called the Collaborative, Northern Rhode Island Collaborative. This was for contracted special education services that were very specific. So students ranged in terms of the number of students that different districts use that. We always had a very, very small number. But we did pay a fee to be part of that and fees for the instruction of students. The collaborative dissolved last year, so when it dissolved, each of the districts, including Smithfield, that had put in invested money into it, it was dispersed to each of those districts. So again, this was a legal process brought to the school committee last year, and the payment was given to us to be used in one lump sum. Melissa has taken this and kept this aside, and then our recommendation is that it go into a school committee capital fund. We suggested special education, but it can go into any of the funds that you recommend, so this would be an $88,575.32.
What questions? One of the things, this is unusual, this is not like typically when we get money, and, from the town, from the state, or whatever, we have all our expenses at the end of the year, we have leftovers considered fund balance. This is money's coming in, but it's not from those sources. So it's better to kind of put it out there individually, so that it's not look like fund balance. Because it really isn't fund balance, it is money, as you just pointed out, that we have the ability to use because of a prior commitment we had. So, and which leads me to one question now. I know the way we're phrasing it here, District Capital Fund for Special Education, and you said it could be used for something else. I mean, if we, what are the other parameters? Does it have to be a special education bill, or, I'm just wondering. I'll tell you what, I'll be quite honest, I'll tell you what I'm wondering. If we're worried about a science teacher at the high school, I'm wondering, that looks an awful lot like an amount of money, very close to a one-year teacher.
So again, in recommendation from my, perspective is never use it for salaries. I believe a few meetings back, there was some, one of the school committee members, I mean, it may have been you, had said maybe we invest in some new special education equipment. Remember, you're doing the ISE room, we may not have money or funds to put in some new equipment or something, I know there's, new appliances and things like that going in, but there may be some other needs. The reason I say the side fund, like you said, so it doesn't fall to the bottom in fund balance, but it's earmarked to the side and it can be tracked if you don't spend it all. So if you decide next year in the ISE room that, Eileen says, I really need this new whatever for the program, and it's only about $7,000, similar to a one-time purchase of equipment, or, you have the money there, and then it might not be for a year or so later, and then you're still drawing down on that fund. I think that's the whole idea of it. But from a legal perspective, I think maybe a legal counsel can weigh in. If the committee decides to change their mind on what they want, I believe that they have the opportunity to move it from that fund. There was no caveat to when the dissolution happened, of the Northern Rhode Island Collaborative on how districts spend their refund. But keep in mind, what went there was special education
I was
tuitions.
just gonna say.
So they
I'm
were-
figuring that out.
They were special education funds from the special education budget, and so we were just all talking together, thinking, when you brought up that idea that maybe we should put it there, so it stays there, could be there for 5 years, maybe you use it all in a year, maybe you use it 2 years.
And there's nothing that would prevent us from something that maybe is in our current budget, backfilling it with this, and then freeing up that money to use for something that's in our budget, in our already tough budget.
Can you say that again, I'm sorry?
Think I can? Okay, there's nothing to prevent us from using these funds to supplant something that's already in our budget, and then that money that's in our budget can then go towards.
Correct, you wouldn't need a
teacher
vote to
and/or-
take it back out. You would need a vote, you're voting it in.
Right, no, I understand
Yeah.
that,
If you vote it in, you can vote it out, and again, it was nothing attached
Just
to
wanna
it.
make sure. Now that I confuse everybody, any further questions?
No, I was just gonna, reiterate most of that. Reiterate what Melissa said about, this came out of special education budget, so it only makes sense, but back in the special education budget. And a lot of times year to year, I know Eileen juggles a budget that you don't know what's gonna be needed for each kid, cause it's so different. So to give her, I mean, it's flexibility for, the unknown of this year, next year, it would only make sense to put it that way.
You still have your reserve in your financial statement for the unexpected cost of
Right.
a tuition, an outplacement,
Exactly.
things like that. So this would be more about investing in those
Something else.
one-time.
Or the individualized
Right.
experience that,
Right.
sometimes we can't go the extra.
Right, or a one-time piece of equipment or improvement.
Okay, this will require a motion.
Motion to approve the transfer of $88,575.32 from the NRI disbursement to the school district capital fund for special education.
Easy to say, is it? A new second. Second. We have a motion and a second. Any further questions or comments? If not, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Against nay, the ayes have it. Item 12, discuss, review, and approve memorandum agreement for the food truck rent.
Certainly, if there's any questions, I'm gonna pass this over to Lisa. She was absolutely key in getting this grant for a food truck to Smithfield Public Schools. I don't know if you wanna say anything about it?
I don't know if anyone had any questions. I know that many of you started at the last meeting when the superintendent had it and is still using commissioners either. Mentioned to at the end of the meeting. The commissioner did, however, set aside some money for the Menu for Success program that is a limited funding source. Those funds will be going away, so we're very fortunate to take advantage of the last of those funds for the food truck. We have an opportunity to have a couple of different venues of how we want to use that money. So we've already started reaching out to other districts that have trucks and looking at how we can either get a trailer and a truck or a self-contained truck, ways to be able to maximize not just the CTE programs with culinary, which was certainly one of the requirements, but also with potentially special ed. Central Falls, for example, has a robust program that they're doing with their food truck and their transition program. And so they have a great, activity going on and folks are getting involved. So we really see this as an opportunity to not only expand and grow the culinary program, but also potentially some exciting opportunities for our special education students. So I'm super excited about it. We'll be meeting with the vendor to start planning it out. I went to take a look at DV's, which was pretty neat how they're one of the few that has a monitor on the outside and cameras inside. And so as, 'cause it's a modular type classroom and it's small, so you can only fit a few folks in there. So as the teacher and the students are preparing food, kids can be outside of the truck but able to see what they're doing and how. So it's almost like having, a classroom that's happening outside of the truck. People using it in all different ways for all different opportunities for the kids. So it's a great program, and I'm thrilled to be able to partner and get this going here at the high school.
And-
So
and
they're
the,
on board.
In terms of the determination of whether we go trailer or self-contained truck, that's down the road, right?
Yes, it'll take a little bit. We're meeting with the vendor in another few weeks after he returns from his vacation. So looking to meet with the vendor later in July, and then we'll get a few options. I hope to involve, the special education teachers, the culinary teacher, the high school staff, and certainly anyone
this committee that's interested to talk about it, but I was under the impression that we were, have a preference of using the trailer model than the sub.
Just off the top of my head, that's my first impression, only because, you know, if you sit up a vehicle for a long period of time,
Yes.
and you don't use it, you're running into problems. Mechanically, I'm talking.
The only thing with that is what's gonna pull the trailer.
Pickup,
The
or a truck, sometimes.
So the 125 can be used for the trailer and the truck. Actually, Davies, that's exactly what they did. They purchased the trailer and the truck for that amount. So the trailer, depending on what options you get, usually comes around 50 to $55,000 for the trailer portion of the food truck. And then, sorry, I took the reverse. About 70,000 for the food truck portion. And then they had another 53,000 to be able to purchase the Ford
And then
F-350
with-
XL.
With the truck, would there be multiple uses with that truck? Cause what happens if the
Yes.
truck is in use and now we can't use the trailer cause the truck is busy plowing sidewalks?
Davies does that too, I believe.
So, yeah,
Davies
they would
does
need
exactly
to, make sure that we free up the truck when it needs to be pulled, but it can be used for other uses while it's not being used for the.
Cause I would like to say, I think there's so much potential with this truck, and like you say,
Yeah, it's
the
exciting.
classroom model, the special education model, I would like to see it just a truck, I don't know if we have preference to that.
Well, we're gonna be
Just-
discussing.
We're gonna be-
it.
alright.
The
So I
committee
will
look
say
at
that the trailer model offers a lot more room, in seeing both options, we can, certainly do little field trips if
Yeah,
anyone's
yeah, that's
interested, we can go look at a few across the state. But the trailer model actually provides a bigger space and you can do a lot more with it. So there's pros and cons to both.
Right, okay.
So,
Right, this will require a motion.
If we, for the motion, I noticed on the background of this, it just says support the culinary arts program, but that doesn't matter, right? We don't say that,
That's
it's
just
gotta be,
background, no, the
okay.
motion is
Alright.
about the truck. Yeah,
So
good.
motion to approve, the agreement for the food truck grant.
Second.
Second.
Motion is made and second. Any further questions, comments? I will say one thing. I was sitting next to the assistant superintendent on the very first day here. To be honest, I was cheating, looking on her computer screen, all right? You always check this marketing class before you do that, right? And, that's when she got this grant. So it was the very first good first day of work for anybody, to get granted this. Anyhow, all right, so you need to vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Against, nay. The ayes have it. Item 13, Boyle project update. I believe you have
So
one.
so there was a meeting right before this one of the Boyle project, so it is winding down. I do want to report that today the certificate of occupancy was granted for that, so the repairs, the punch list items have been completed. Our own director of facilities was out there today, just ensuring that we were in a great place. So there are some other bills, and still there is money that has been held back. So if there's anything that we see that is missing, a substantial amount of money is still being held back until we say that it's finished. But the OPM for that project was at the meeting, just to review that the contractor is at the end of the project.
Next is the school building committee.
Quick question,
Yes,
on Boyle.
yes, Boyle.
At this last Boyle meeting, was the advertising subcommittee brought up?
I did briefly discuss it. I was the one actually who brought it up. So people thought it would be a great idea if I can get someone else to spearhead it and to be able to move forward with it. However, certainly one of our longstanding members did ask about the company that he works for. He would like to be able to have his company's sponsor a sign for the front of the Boyle project. Yes.
Right, now I have a question. Now I'm confused. So they have an advertising committee there, yet we as a school department are trying to advertise that. I don't wanna have us.
The committee is me right now, so there's
There you
really
go,
no committee.
okay. All right.
Was that
Just clarity, was that changed? Because I mean, just in recent news when it came to all conversations Boyle, just going back and, refreshing on the meeting minutes. I mean, I don't wanna call out my names, but I thought there were 2 members of an advertising committee from Boyle that were supposed to go out and start the process of one of the improvements at the
I
program.
know what you're talking about.
Yeah, no, I'm not, your memory might be better than me. I know that we have been banding about it, and there have been different members saying it. I think everyone's just waiting for, having what these prices will be and what the policy will be, and then certainly some sort of consistent approach in terms of how we're gonna, go forward with companies and vendors.
Gotcha. No, I'm okay with not waiting, it's been quite a while anyway, with no results, so, okay, thank you.
One question, did you say that sign that company wanted, was that the sign from like that class that we had?
So the class of 2022, so again, this was an off-the-top conversation, but I do believe they would, so we're going out to bid again, because as you may remember, the sign cost and the installation was several $1,000s more than what the class gift was. So this, off the cuff, which I believe is a true offer, would be once that bid comes back, if again it is over, to be able actually to either take that part of it or to actually take the whole cost of it, as long as we can use that to advertise that company.
Okay. Moving on to school building committee update, school building committee met yesterday, and one of the major things was we approved the change to the special ed room. That actually was incorporated everything that we needed to do. The teachers' concerns about moving part of the classroom around, the tech department's concern about making sure our servers were protected, and greatest of all things, it was revenue neutral, so it will not cost any extra money. We'll get it back, but revenue neutral is good. And there was another thing it did too, and I can't remember it now. But I know they're also not gonna change where the psychologist classroom is, because the psychologist really needs to be close to that classroom since they work with some of the students, as opposed to way down or somewhere else in the building. So overall, it was a good meeting on that. What else there? Any other major thing right now? They said that the culinary room is proceeding along. They're putting in the plumbing, and they don't expect any problems after June 30th. And they got a little head start on the ISC room, and now they should be even making a better push towards it, so that when July 1 starts, they can get going in full.
So I think you have it perfectly. The culinary room is almost done. I believe that they're marking tomorrow as having the flooring complete. The drain has already been placed in there, and the plumbing, so the culinary room should be substantially completed tomorrow, which is great. And then the ISC room, Red Oak is doing all the pre-work, and feels that they will be on time with this project, if not a little bit early. The school committee had recommended, as did the school building committee, to go to option 1, which was the replacement of the flooring at $28,000. My understanding from the town manager today is that the town council is in agreement. We are moving fast towards demolition. The $28,000 is a fixed cost to be able to move forward on that, so the room will look very good.
Okay, 1 second, I'm just talking to the attorney for 1 second. All right, I'm just asking for a piece of advice here from the attorney, because our next 4 motions all have to do with paying bills, which are all essentially capital bills, I believe, of one nature or another, including Colliers and Slam, they're part of capital projects. So the other night, if you attended the meeting, it seemed like we were getting a little bit of a runaround in terms of capital funding. In terms of what we get our 35% back into the fund or not. And so I was just asking him if we should look at adding adding language to our motions on capital, only capital, that any, for any capital expense, that housing aid go to the Smithfield School Committee Capital Fund, which is how it's defined in the town charter. That says 35% goes back or whatever the housing aid is. So, that's what I was asking. So instead of just saying approve whatever here, approve and then add that wording onto this. I apologize, I should have actually asked you in advance of this, and I don't know if it's something we can do now and then later.
Right now, in terms of these invoices, are they
Do these 4 invoices go to the town council or not?
No, so none of them will go to the, I'll just tell you what they are. So the first one is, that was Boyle, the added fire alarm.
Yep.
The second one, is for the high school kitchen. It's not part of the, this is, goes from
That's
some of those
through the,
grant, nutrition fund, so that's
Gotcha.
not part of the construction,
Right,
so there's no
so
housing
yeah.
aid on that.
Okay.
The third one, is on the new project, that's the emergency project for the CTE in the ISE rooms. And the fourth one, actually, that was done at a meeting that I was not at, the one I was absent, we didn't realize it until it was already published. It was done, it was voted on at the building committee, the emergency building committee, and then the next meeting the next day, so we don't really have to vote on that, and that's already been approved on July
Right.
11th to 57.
So not to worry that. Okay, take
Um,
it.
If
So
I
then-
may,
yes.
just ask a question,
Sure.
though, about adding that clause, again, the charter, whatever that says in there, they were the ones who brought up, when I brought up the whole thing about the housing aid, and they brought the little 3 words that we knew they were gonna bring up about, it didn't come out of that fund, so just so you know, the Colliers has been coming from the schools fund balance, and the, SLAM as well. Those 2 things are coming, even though we take them obviously to the building committee, those, we're cutting the checks. And then for the costs that are gonna come out of, for instance, Red Oak, that will get cut by the town, but it doesn't go to the town council because they already approved the contract, just like Boyle. We go to the Boyle committee meeting, they approve an invoice, and then we approve an invoice here at the school committee. And then I ask the town to cut the check because the rest of the Boyle projects are all being funded from their cash. So it doesn't go back to town council for a vote. Does that make sense?
Yeah, but what I'm getting at is though, when at the end of the year, when
Right.
everything is added up
Mm-hmm.
and we submit the paperwork, the town then, not town, the state gets the figures and then says, okay, these are eligible and they send 35% back. I just wanna make
To
sure.
the town.
Yeah, but I just wanna make sure that we have that on record, that's what we're saying, so that we can't get that.
And these will be part of the, so the Colliers bill here, the SLAM bill here will be part of the emergency project, so those will come back, when filed after the bills are paid through, could be every 30 days. I'll ensure to train the new person, or I'll do it for them before I go. We haven't paid a ton of bills, just Colliers and SLAM. And then the, Sullivan is, actually, to be honest with you, we actually have that invoice and we can actually issue it. But they've been issuing all the Boyle ones thus far. Again, that was
Maybe said
another
we've
one.
already approved, so this is what I'm doing. this
Correct.
thing tonight.
Correct, we don't need to approve that.
All right, well, what we'll do then is we'll add the phrase to the item 15 and item 17 only, because 16 is coming from food service money, 18 will not do. All right?
To be clear.
Yep.
I'm not familiar with the charter language that you're citing tonight. That's ultimately gonna control an interpretation that of the charter is gonna rest with the town solicitor.
Correct.
So, that additional language, when the reimbursement comes through from the town, if they read the charter a certain way and they have more flexibility around where that money is, and how the reimbursement is placed, that's ultimately gonna control not the wording of your motion.
Right. But at
Okay.
least this signals that where our intent and what our understanding is, based on things that have been said over a number of years, to not only this committee, but other committees. So it sends a signal.
And given my understanding of the what you're putting forth here on the motion, I do not believe that it would disrupt payments, or shouldn't disrupt how much it's about. It's always about what happens after the fact.
Exactly. Exactly. Vendors and everybody else get their money. This is not, this is down the road. So, okay.
Could
All right.
you just reread that?
Okay,
Additional
what'll
language.
be, so when you make one of these for 15 and 17 only, the language that should be added on that will be, a little note over here. That housing aid go to the Smithfield School Committee Capital Fund. Okay? All right, having said that, item 15, discuss, review, and approve invoice payment for Sullivan and McLaughlin for an amount not to exceed $2,735. That housing aid go to Smithfield School Committee Capital Fund. Got it, put it right in. This, as you heard already, is, got to do with the Boyle project. So we'll need a motion and a second.
Motion to approve invoice payment Sullivan and McLaughlin for the amount not to exceed $2,735. The housing aid go to Smithfield School Committee Capital Fund.
And a second. Motion made, second. Any further questions or comments? If not, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Against, nay. The ayes have it. Okay, 16, we don't have to worry about this. Discuss, review, and approve contract with Arden Engineering for high school kitchen for an amount not to exceed $35,675. And this is coming through food service. So this will require a motion.
Motion to approve contract with Arden Engineering for a high school kitchen for an amount not to exceed $35,675. The housing aid go to.
You don't know, not on this one, not on this one. And this will have a second.
Second.
We'll get it down.
I got it written down here.
There you go. Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Against, nay, the ayes have it. Item 17, this one will need it. Discuss, review, and approve invoice for Collier's project leaders not to exceed $15,749.80. And this is part of the emergency.
You guys
project.
waiting for me to say it? Thanks. Motion to approve invoice for Collier's project leaders not to exceed $15,749.80. That housing aid go to Smithfield School Committee Capital Fund.
There you go, in a second.
Second.
There you go. All right, any further questions? If not, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Against, nay, the ayes have it. We are not doing 18 because it's already been done.
Okay.
Item 19, first reading of revised student dress code policy, JICA. This is not actually the first reading. The superintendent feels that there was not enough feedback on it, so get rid of first reading. This is just informal now. If anybody has any questions on it, we will bring it up as a proper first reading at a future meeting, which then leads to a second reading. So,
So just to add to that, so I am having the principals take a look at the current policy. It's also in your portal. We're comparing it with other school districts around. It may end up just being a complete revision of that policy because it just needs significant. So the comments and the questions, I was hopeful we'd have a draft for tonight, but we're coming to the conclusion that we need a full rewrite of it before we bring it to school committee.
okay, it does not require a vote. Now we move on to item 20.
Can I just make
Yes,
one comment?
by all means.
I was looking at other districts' dress code policies as well. They are short, to the point, very sweet.
Yes.
You know, one, as long as, you know, it's not copyrighted. East Providence is just very to the point. Doesn't say anything about cleavage, so that's a plus. And covers, as I said, everything, including the exceptions for, you know, religion, medical needs, stuff like that.
So after looking at it and tweaking it, the secondary principles, we've come to that conclusion. We looked at some other policies, same thing, much cleaner. It really does make sense for us to just redo it, make it more general, take out those specifics which really don't help in terms of, there's too many specifics that are in there. But what is the philosophy of the district in terms of a dress code? So that will get to prior to the next meeting.
Any further comments? If not, we'll move on to item 20. Discuss, review, approve superintendent's attendance at AASA Governing Board meeting July 7 through 11 in Washington, D.C. This
Just so that the newer members know, so last year I was appointed to represent the Rhode Island school districts by Rhode Island Superintendent's Association at the National Superintendent's Association. There are 2 meetings a year. I was nominated and elected for a 3-year term. This conference is totally paid for by RISA AASA, so that includes transportation, meal, hotel registration, etc. Part of this time, it is face-to-face meeting with our legislators, so just so that you know, some of the areas that I've worked on over the past year, both in Washington and back here in Washington, D.C., I've testified in front of Senate and House subcommittee on E-rate. So that is providing free internet or greatly reduced internet costs to districts, to students that or families that need internet accessibility in their homes to be able to do their homework, should it be digital, etc. The other has been more of a CTE awareness. Rhode Island is very different than, for instance, New York and Connecticut, in which Rhode Island is a state of choice for CTE programs, so a student at Smithfield can go anywhere in the state for a CTE program, even if it is the same as ours, and similarly come to us. That is not the case in other states that I've been at. So looking at, the equity and the fairness of that on smaller districts the size of us and several smaller than us, when you're losing $18,000-$19,000 per student, it is a much more significant hit than some of the other larger districts. So those are 2 of the main roles that I have, and I've also been up to the state capitol over the past year, and that was for our transportation corridor. We're part of region number 3, which is the largest region in the state of Rhode Island, so we can transport students all the way down to South County for our homeless population, for our CTE, and for other services. So having, again, changing those zones so that they're more equitable, and that if we are transporting to other schools, they're all about the same radius, instead of one being much longer, one and a higher expense.
This will require a motion.
Motion to approve superintendent's attendance to the AASA governing board meeting July 2nd to 11th in Washington, D.C.
And second?
Second.
Any further questions, comments? Not all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Against, nay. The ayes have it. Item 21, discussion of future joint school committee and town council meeting agenda topics. I have not gotten a correspondence from the town council president. He said he was gonna send me some dates or whatever, so I think we should probably be proactive and pick some dates ourselves. But also here, if there are things that we wanna talk about, we should be making a list. So I understand they are making a list, checking it twice. So, floor is open. Anybody?
I would like, I guess, to start off with a reasoning. We got no reason as to why they made a motion last meeting. I would just like to hear their background and why. And to see, also to talk about, I hear a lot of times, and it could be town council members, could be everyone around the town, about our schools not being where they should be. I would just like to hear their recommendations of how to get there without funding, and what they think we should, how we can improve our schools when we don't have enough to, add new programs and different things. So just, just why, and in a perfect world, or in their perfect world, what would, how could we get to where they want us to be? That would be,
Yes.
I'd like to try to arrange a walkthrough of all 5 schools, because I think, even myself, I'm not completely familiar with all the aspects of the high school. It's changed a lot, the better and worse in the 25 years since I've been here. So I think we get a little disconnected, and we don't actually see the realities of each classroom. So to arrange that, and I certainly, I fear it's gonna turn into it, at least a little contentious, but I wanna avoid the tit for tat. I really do, and, hopefully it can just be a very open, honest, and candid conversation. You know, in general, where do we wanna be in 10 years? You know, we can always go back and look at, okay, we've been lax over the past, the mistakes made in the past 10 years, we can't go back and we can't go forward. So it's just, okay, where is this vision for, particularly our secondary schools, to be catching up, be a little bit more competitive, a little bit more modern. But then the reality is, yeah, that's going to require substantial commitment from the town to invest in it.
I think another thing too to talk about is sometimes I feel like, you know, there's a little resistance when you don't fully understand, and I feel like they don't fully understand, like say, special education budget and how we have these funds, but they can only go to a certain spot. So it may look like we're getting X amount extra, but we're really not, we're losing money. You know, so just to kind of give them, background as to maybe a special ed background, maybe talking about, the needs of, I think one of the council members was, confused on why we were even moving the ISA room. And, to hear that, and it's like, did you know they were even confused on that? Wow, it would help if we did have tours, so I know you two weren't on, the committee, we did have tours, what, a year or so ago?
It was in December.
December, so it did help, but, it's just, sometimes I'm quick to be like, oh, why are they doing certain things, and it's just lack of knowledge of knowing, you know, there's certain things, I don't understand with town council, I'm like, why are they doing that, and then once I heard, I'm like, oh, all right, that makes sense, so maybe just coming into mutual knowledge of understanding both sides and understanding their spot and our spot and kind of growing from that would be helpful. I don't know, maybe we can ask them beforehand, what don't you, or what would you like us to explain more about our district, or have our professionals explain more about different areas, so we can go in with questions they have already, you know, pre-answered, so that way no one's just feeling attacked, or, and vice versa. We have questions for them too. I don't want them to feel attacked, I don't want us to feel attacked, I don't want anybody to be disrespected, because I feel like that's what's happening here, and it's not fair to our people, it's not fair to their people, we're all humans, we should all be treated as humans even though we disagree. So that kind of bringing that and starting that, we all, I would say that we all love Smithfield, and that's why we're all here. I mean, we're not making crazy money to sit up here and give our time, and the same thing with town council, so to kind of grow in that mutual of, we're all here because we want to be, we want better. I don't think anyone's here like, you know, I want to sit up here so we can make Smithfield schools awful. That's why we're all sitting here and giving our time in the summer away. You know, and I think that's the same way with, town council, so to kind of grow on that, and yes, it gets contentious, and yes, we're all passionate about schools, and they're passionate about the town, right? They don't wanna have to raise taxes or do certain things, and just kind of that mutual agreement of, you know, we'll listen to you, you listen to us, and we'll find hopefully a happy medium, right? Maybe, yeah.
We'll have to keep our minds open on dates. I think, we'll probably be putting this thing out a few weeks, but, just so you know. September, if I hear from him, I'll say we're looking at dates. Maybe he can throw a few out, but I have not. I did write him on another matter today, so maybe it'll shake it up. They can only laugh at you saying 25 years ago you were there. You're a baby. So, believe it or not, it's my 50-year anniversary reunion from high school this year.
I'm not sure it's 20th, right?
Okay, nothing further on that. Communication, copy of resignations, retirements, new hires in the district. Which will bring us public forum. Nobody. Consider items added future agendas. Do we have any new? Believe me, I've been keeping a list, trying to get everything here worked between now and the fall.
Yeah, I had one. Either side of the new year, Superintendent, you mentioned the idea of hiring a grant writer, not only for school, but just municipal. I think you had referenced someone who previously done work in Providence, if I remember correctly. And I think over the past 5-6 years, I mean, just at the time, I was looking back at my notes, you know, was able to capture $6 to $10 million in grants for the town.
Correct.
Considering the uncertainty when it comes to state and local funding, I think any additional revenue sources is something that we should entertain. This would also be something maybe, Mr. Chair, to throw on that, joint session meeting, because this is something that I think should be either a town expense or a shared expense. If it's something that we're gonna entertain, because we benefit both the town and the school district together. And even earlier, you mentioned other grant writing is becoming more and more competitive. So if this is something that can help, I don't think it'll turn down more money.
Okay.
I have something else. Can I go back to the town thing?
Yeah.
Alright, just to add, they mentioned potentially having us work with, different, borrowing trucks, borrowing different things. Maybe, also bringing up joining forces to see if district money's enough. That'd be something there.
Okay.
Sorry.
Places where we can
Yeah,
share expense.
Yeah.
And could I just make one last comment, Mr. Chair?
What you guys are doing.
I know, I'm pushing it.
Yes, you may.
Sorry.
Which one is this under?
It's not under anything.
Go ahead and say, I'll tell you if you're out of order. Go ahead.
Just wanted to make a mention that last night on Channel 10, WJAR does a certain segment called Community Treasures, and I just wanted to recognize Ability Bridge, which is a great local nonprofit, amazing group of Smithfield students and volunteers, founded by Gwen and Mallory Clavitt, were recognized last night. Anybody who has met and spent any time with not only those young women, but all the volunteers, they are the epitome of selflessness, and they practice true encouragement. Very proud of them, and nobody's more deserving of that recognition.
That was a wonderful recognition that played over throughout the evening last night. Thanks to Diana for raising that awareness. So there was a lot of coverage on Gwen and Mallory, all of the other people working with it, and then just so many happy kids and really active and involved kids. It was a wonderful tribute.
Okay. What's that? Thank you. Item 25, motion to convene executive session pursuant to Rhode Island General Laws 42-46-5A2, legal advice regarding litigation of Daniel Mayer versus Town of Smithfield et al. 42-46-5A2, and review of executive session minutes of June 12th, 25. We are not doing the first part of the executive sessions. So on your notes, that's item B, C, and D, which we will need a motion to go into.
Motion to convene executive session?
And a second.
Second.
Motion made and seconded with Ms. Faber.
Aye.
Ms. Hogan.
Aye.
Mr. LeBlanc.
Aye.
Myself, aye. Bingo. Where should we?